President Trump is increasingly testing the limits of his executive power, including with the deployments of the National Guard and removing officials not in line with his agenda. The president announced the firing of Federal Reserve Governor Lisa Cook, and now the DOJ has opened a criminal investigation. Let's break it down with James Sample, professor at Hofstra Law School and ABC News contributor. Thank you so much for joining us, as always. First of all, is this within his power as president to terminate Lisa Cook?
So under the statutory regime, there is a for-cause provision that says a Federal Reserve governor may be removed for cause. But because in the 111-year history of the Federal Reserve, Lindsay, that has never happened, there is no judicial precedent testing what the for-cause provision really means. President Trump, by trying to fire Lisa Cook, is certainly testing the boundaries of that, particularly on what seems to be likely a pretextual basis here.
Now, he's accusing Lisa Cook of falsifying bank documents and property records. How are Cook and her attorneys responding tonight?
Cook and her attorneys deny any wrongdoing. They say that to the extent that there may be questions about her mortgage applications, that there's nothing fraudulent about them, that maybe there's a clerical error, something of that nature. They point out, and today, just earlier this afternoon, ProPublica, an investigative report, revealed that at least 3 members of Trump's own cabinet have similar circumstances to what Lisa Cook is pointing out. They've filed a lawsuit trying to prohibit the president from firing her. This is going to be ultimately decided by the courts, and I suspect by the Supreme Court, given that this is really a question of first impression and a hugely, hugely important matter relative to the United States economic independence.
And we've seen this out of the Trump playbook in recent weeks and months. He accused Adam Schiff of fraud as well. And then I'm just curious to get a sense from what you think this means about how President Trump is categorizing these mortgage rules.
I think it's opportunistic. There's no question. On the other hand, it's not a great look if you're Lisa Cook. It's not a great, if there is something to be found, President Trump and his administration are going to find it if you are perceived as an adversary of the administration. The Supreme Court, though, no matter how conservative and favorable to President Trump the Supreme Court has been, and it has been extremely favorable, just 3 months ago in a case called Wilcox involving the National Labor Relations Board, went out of its way, really a tangent that wasn't even an issue, to say that the Federal Reserve is structurally different and that because it is analogous to the first and second banks of the United States, indicating that for the Supreme Court, the Federal Reserve's independence is hugely important, just as it is to many other Americans.
All right, let's talk about the president deploying the National Guard to various cities. We've seen him do it in L.A., saw him do it in D.C. as well. Now he's saying that he may go into Chicago potentially by this weekend. Now, we know J.B. Pritzker, the governor of Illinois, has said that he is vehemently opposed to that the residents of Chicago don't want that. Let's listen to what he had to say during a press conference this week.
You're likely to see videos of them hauling away mothers and fathers, traveling to work or picking up their kids from school. Sometimes they will detain, handcuff, and haul away children. Let's be clear, the terror and cruelty is the point.
Now, we understood that there were some technicalities that really did allow him to do that in D.C. What can he and can't he do when it comes to other cities that actually do have a governor?
You're absolutely right, Lindsay. And I think it's helpful to think of these in 2 separate categories. D.C. is one category. Right. Los Angeles and Chicago and other cities like that are second category. And so in D.C., the president has the authority as the commander-in-chief of the D.C. National Guard to mobilize them without having to federalize them. Federalize them is a complex term that basically means that in other states, as opposed to the district, you are subject to what's known as the Posse Comitatus Act, which is an old 1878 statute that in a nutshell says that federal law enforcement can't be used for domestic law enforcement purposes. Federal military services can't be used for domestic law enforcement purposes. In D.C., that's not exactly true. In California and in in Chicago, without the consent of the governors, so you can think of Governor Pritzker as akin to Governor Newsom in California. And just earlier this week on Tuesday, Judge Judge Charles Breyer in San Francisco said that the use of the National Guard and the use of the United States military in Los Angeles earlier this summer, and still continuing to this day, amounted to a violation of that Posse Comitatus Act. So therefore it was illegal. However, that ruling is stayed pending the opportunity for the administration to appeal.
All right, James Sample, always appreciate your insight. Thank you so much. Legendary fashion designer Giorgio Armani has died. He is known as the godfather